Welcome back to Gruber Motor Company. I'm Pete Gruber, and I have Victor Vianis here with us today, our service manager at
Morning.
GMC. And we are streaming on a number of platforms. Today is the Roadster podcast. Again, if you don't have a Roadster, don't let that worry you. We'll entertain some non-Roadster questions, but we'd certainly like to keep or focus on Roadster issues today. Got a lot of news items. And the background picture behind us, by the way, is an artificial intelligence generated image. The prompt that I asked it to do was, I want to see a 2011 red Tesla Roadster outside a casino in Monaco. And if you look behind me there, you can kind of see the Mediterranean. AI typically does not generate accurate images of buildings. So I don't think there's a building that looks precisely like this in Monaco, but it represents some of the opulence that you see there.
Looks beautiful.
It does, yeah. And then the other thing is for the purists, those that are looking for detail on the Tesla Roadster, AI has not yet learned how to render those precisely. So I think I'm seeing 4 hood vanes. There are only 2 on a Tesla Roadster. But aside from that, it's a pretty good representation. And it looks like we've got someone joining us already on Instagram, Faris Brulf. Good morning and good afternoon. Again, when you ask a question, we'd like to see where you're coming in from. It's always fascinating to us and our viewers, the wide range of people that join us on these podcasts. Yeah. Pay no attention to Victor's hat. He hasn't been completely indoctrinated yet into Tesla, but his shirt does say Gruber Motor Company. So,
Victor, we need to get way up on that mic.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. And you still have a Beamer, right?
Yes, I still do.
Okay.
I still have it.
All right. So let me ask you, for the audience here, which you like better, Tesla or BMW?
I have both.
Okay, I think he's answered it. He's reluctant to answer that.
I think I drive the Tesla 99% of the time, and when the BMW is up and running and it's functional, it's being driven once in a while.
I have
Gas prices is just way too expensive.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that in a while. Here we've got.
I was gonna say I filled up yesterday.
Yeah.
On my SUV. $80. It's like 480 something, 485 or something like that. It's crazy.
For Philip, yeah. Well, we can probably jump right into that other topic then. There was a great article that I found that shows the cost of an EV versus a ICE vehicle. And they give a pretty simple formula here. A conservative rule of thumb, they say, is an electric car gets 3 to 4 miles per kWh. So to divide the total miles you drive each month by 3 to get the kWh you would use monthly, 3 or 4. So you multiply that number by your cost per kilowatt hour in your local area. And you know what? I was surprised. In Phoenix, and this was probably 20, 30 years ago, APS and SRP, the 2 main electrical utilities here, used to charge around 8 to 9 cents per kilowatt hour. Today, it's almost 14 cents per kilowatt hour, so that's gone up tremendously. But anyway, the rest of the formula is you take your mileage that you drive each month, and Americans on an average drive about 12,700 miles annually, so about 1,000 miles per month. 1087 is the exact number they came up with. And so they're saying that you will use about 353 kWh in that time frame total. And in the U.S., the average cost of electricity as of April 2023 is about 15.4 cents per kilowatt hour. So charging an electric car, now get this, Jesse, for the entire month costs $55 versus that $80 that you spent that 1 week.
For an entire month. Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah, not bad. All right, so moving right along here. We've got some interesting topics here. One of them is Roadster related. Ways to get into a locked Roadster. And this sometimes happens to us. A brick Roadster, which means that the doors are closed for transport. The windows are up. It's got a soft top or hard top on it. and it shows up, and that driver has the key. And I've done this myself. We get the key. You can unlock a locked Roadster if it's not live by putting the key underneath the driver's door, and there's a lock set there. And you have to be careful not to turn that too hard, because the design of that that lock set isn't stellar. They use basically hot glue to affix that lock set
Adhesive.
into the door. Yep. It's not an industrial epoxy by any chance, and I've done it myself. You turn a little bit too hard and you hear snap.
Breaks
Next
off.
thing you know, well, it didn't break the key, but it loosened the lock
The tumbler.
inside. So now you're spinning the entire lock set, and you're never going to get in that
Now
car
you're really
that way.
locked out.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what do you do next then? What's another way to get in?
The only alternative is to break into the vehicle, is having either a long piece of wire or a breaking kit if you have one available, and keying out the keys, or attempting to grab the inner door handle.
The door handle, yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what we found is that a coat hanger won't do it. First of all, it's barely long enough and it's too thin. Because what you have to do is put a hook on it, something like this. And what you're now attempting to do is get in between the top of the glass and the soft top. Hard top's very difficult, and you don't want to damage any paint. But with the soft top, you can get a piece of wire into the seam between the upper portion of the
glass.
side glass, and then reach over to the other door handle. And if you can get that hook behind that handle, you can pull on that. Now, you have to have somebody on the other side, because if you're doing it by yourself, and I've tried to do this myself too, and you get that handle loose, it'll go click, and the door will start to open, but as soon as you walk to the other side, it shuts again.
Right.
So with two people, it works. And the wire that I recommend is, for those of you that are familiar with construction, suspended grid ceiling wire is ideal. It's about 1/8 of an inch thick. It's steel, galvanized, that doesn't matter. But that's about the right strength of wire that you will need to get into a locked Roadster.
And a little bit of tape on the end, just so you don't damage
Good point.
the chrome on the handle or any of the interior pieces.
And then equally tape on the glass and on the soft top. So that's how you can get into a locked Roadster. And of course, if the driver has the key, and again, I've done this, while you're in the car and people are pushing it because it's bricked in, or they're jacking it up to put dollies underneath it to get it in because the wheels are locked. And sometimes you get caught up in the moment, and I've done this. You actually take the key with you, close the door, and then you go, oh, and then you swear, which I can't do on the air here, right? But it's always a 4-letter word at that point in time.
And it's happened. It's happened at the shop.
It does happen, yes. So, Victor, I was curious. This is the first time you've been on the show.
Yes.
All right.
First time.
And you see a lot of things over there at Gruber Motor Company: Roadster issues, customer issues. Is there anything that you want to start with to tell us about that might be educational or edifying for our viewers?
One thing that I'd like to go ahead and voice is the importance of the thermal management system on a Roadster. A lot of the Roadsters that come in have the original equipment, but we recommend that all thermal management components get replaced because they are original. They can stop functioning at any time. It's recommended that they get replaced after 4 years. And I think that's really our go-to at the shop, is making sure that the battery stays within the temperature that it should be operating with. And whether the vehicle is operating, it is good preventative maintenance to have them replaced. We have had several vehicles in our shop that we have test driven for several days, and temperatures are monitored, and lo and behold, prior to departure, a fan might go out. And that's why we recommend all components to be replaced, even though they're currently functioning due to age.
Proactively replacing fans and pumps.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a great topic. To put it in perspective, in the Tesla Roadster 1.5 and 2.0 or 2.x, you have DC brush motor
Hmm.
cooling fans that cool the PEM. There are a number of issues with that. A DC brush motor cooling fan wears out. You have two things that wear: brushes, and if you can picture this, it's like a pencil eraser, two pencil erasers on both sides of an armature that are continuously feeding DC voltage to make that motor spin. Well, they're hard carbon and they wear out because you have a copper commutator that is running and rubbing
Running.
against those. We've done autopsies on fans after we've replaced them or they've gone defective, and you'll literally find a pile of shavings, carbon dust inside those fans.
Hmm.
It's all the stuff that has worn off. The second thing that happens is bearings. The bearings wear out. Everybody knows that. So we recommend about 4 to 5 years on any cooling fan. It's just
Hmm.
cheap insurance because it's a lot cheaper to get that replaced while that car is up in the air in for service than to start all over
Hmm.
again, have to bring it to a service center, to our shop, and we open it back up and all that.
And you have to remember these are electric vehicles that depend on the thermal management system when plugged in and charged at home.
Mhm.
So even if you're not potentially driving the vehicle, using the vehicle, the thermal management system is still being used while stored and charged at home.
Because the car is maintaining a
Exactly.
certain temperature range.
Hmm.
Exactly. Which then gets us into the other portions of the power electronics module cooling system. With a Roadster, you don't want to forego your annual preventive maintenance unless you haven't driven the car at all, right? Even then, there's some risk that you're starting to fill up or clog up those heat sinks, those transistor heat sinks, because as it's cooling itself, when it's not being driven, it's going to be drawing air from the bottom of the car.
Exactly.
Depending how clean your garage is, you may have leaves blowing in, you may have dust, So those annuals are important. And then there are other aging issues in a Tesla Roadster cooling system. That duct, you want to tell us about that?
The PEM cooling duct on a 2.0 Roadster is a large rubber-like hose that goes from the PEM heat sinks to the PEM fan. That cooling duct gets dry, dirty, brittle, cracks, starts to unravel,
Well,
and
it's a neoprene rubber,
Mhm.
which with age becomes brittle, dries up, like you say.
And even the ones that we've seen that are still in good shape, they're still dirty. We have a hard time cleaning all the dirt and grime, and I'd rather not replace it with the original. I'd rather
Mhm.
always
And
provide a new one.
and we find fissures in those as well. What happens is the thing is about 18 inches long or so,
Hmm.
and it has a metal band that runs through it, which keeps the round architecture for that duct. But what happens is in between that metal or that metal ring, you have neoprene rubber. And as that ages, oftentimes you get cracks and fissures. Now your CFM is affected, the cubic
Hmm.
feet per minute that it's being able to push through to that to those PEM heat sinks. And for those of you not familiar with PEM heat sinks, those are large aluminum fins that the transistors on the inside the PEM mount to through a coupler or a non-conductive, what we call insulating material, and that's how the heat gets transferred from those transistors to those heat sinks, and then air draws across that to cool the PEM. What the annual PM does is it cleans out. We should have brought a heat sink with us. We have lots of them next door. We use them in the critical power world as well. But what it is, it's basically a finned type of aluminum chunk, billet aluminum. And those fins in between those spaces fills up with dust, debris. We've even found twigs in there and, string, pieces of balloon, you name it.
Hmm.
Anything that it can suck up from the road eventually
It
could
will.
end up, because there is no filtration on the outside in that closed loop or in that open loop system.
Or depending where it's stored, we've found uh, where rodents have made their little nest, their
Oh,
little
yes,
home.
yeah. Oh, that's a whole nother thing. Yeah. There's not much preventive measures that you can take against rodents other than having rodent traps in your garage. Staying on that subject for a moment, I don't understand what it is, but they prefer a certain type of insulation on wire.
Hmm.
They will get into the running boards on a Roadster, and you've got a number of different wires running through there, coax and current carrying conductors, and they seem to prefer only a particular type of PVC, and they'll leave the wire right next to it alone. Something tasty in there for them, I
Yeah,
guess.
we've had, let's see, a Model X or Y that came into the shop for a harness repair because of rodent damage. We repaired the harness and we added some rodent repellent tape around the harness so it keep them from coming back.
Hmm.
But from what I've read, it seems that the wires could have possibly made from some soy type based material for the insulation,
Organic stuff,
and
sure.
I think that's what attracts them.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, when you get rodents in a car, it's usually carnage, and sometimes they'll eat right through the conductor, so that you lose your rear camera, for example. That's a common
Yeah,
one. They
I've
like
seen
that
that.
coax. Yeah. So we're still on the subject of thermal management in a Roadster. We're going to continue with that in a moment here, but we've got a bunch of questions here. And the first question that I see at the top there is, why are you both wearing sunglasses inside a building? Well, that's not an uncommon question that we get asked. People used to ask the Blues Brothers that all the time, too. And I don't think either Elwood or Leroy or whatever his name was ever had an answer. Neo on The Matrix, I don't think he's ever answered that question. But we are going to eventually answer that question with a video release. And I think you'll all be interested and pleasantly surprised why sunglasses are part of our production, both videos and podcasts. Instagram, Wemick47 is asking, can I get a job at your company? Absolutely, Victor.
Send us your resume.
Exactly. Yep. ev@gruber.com.
Must be local to Arizona.
Yeah, that would help.
Or
yeah.
willing to relocate.
And you can't quite tell a commute in this business. It's kind of like you can't work out of your house and fix cars in our facility.
No, it doesn't work that way.
That's one career that requires an on-site presence. Smuggler is back with us from TikTok. He sends us a heart gift. Welcome back, Smuggler.
Thank you.
George is here. He says, good morning. Nice, like the corn-based wire insulation. Yeah, or like the soy-based. Yep. Yeah, rodents love that stuff, George. And they can create some real damage in a EV or any kind of a car. Instagram, 13 Cherry John says, they use soy in the insulation. Rodents love it. Yeah,
a lot of people have experience with the rodents and insulation, apparently.
And it gets expensive, I mean, there was a Roadster up in the Northwest about 3-4 months ago or so. And apparently rodents had eaten the wires in the front of that Roadster so badly the entire wiring harness needed to be replaced. And that's not an easy chore because part of the car was actually built around stuff. So, as they were building it, they were burying stuff. So you have to remove a whole bunch of things to get to it.
With the Roadster, there is no replacement harness. So the only option is to repair.
Yeah.
With the Model S's, there's that fine line where we have to decide, does the labor equal to the amount of the cost of the harness? Should we do the repair or replacement? And it depends on the extent of damage. And it's not only a replacement or repair, there's other things that could have shorted out and caused additional damage downstream.
Good point. Yeah. I mean, by the time they chew through and it grounds out current carrying conductors, now you're starting to affect the things downstream or upstream that connects to that.
Yeah, we haven't found any fried rice just yet.
No. This particular Roadster in the Northwest actually ended up potentially coming here for a harness repair, which is what we would have done. But Tesla at the time was looking for any parts Roadsters that they had purchased that they could take the harness out of. Now think of the amount of labor that's involved there, because it's not the entire harness that's defective.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Right.
a portion of it. Then you have to remove it from an existing parts car, and then take everything out. Anyway, I think
It's
it
a
finally got
project.
resolved. They must have found a wiring harness, so I think that customer's back up and
Mhm.
running. TikTok, Tom Reed, what is the function of a Tesla valve? Um, you're probably talking about the octo valve in some of the later vehicles, part of the cooling system.
Mhm.
And yeah, that would be my guess on that. The people that did a teardown on that was Sandy Munro and his team. And they went into great detail on that octo valve. I think
Yeah,
it
they
was in a
love that
Model
thing.
S. Yeah. It's got such a cool name, too, octo valve. It sounds exotic, right?
Well, there's something about the efficiency of it that Sandy just fell in love with, so I would definitely go check out Monroe Live channel for that.
Yeah, great place to find other content as well.
There's one question that you skipped over from YouTube.
Oh, okay. YouTube, Rolling Stonks. Okay. How is the Tesla Shock Group buy going? I can tell you this is probably the longest project that I've been involved in with
Mhm.
Roadsters. Um, First of all, let's put it in perspective. The original company that made Roadster shocks, Bilstein, is no longer making Roadster shocks.
Right.
And that's not uncommon if they've got a small run for a esoteric vehicle that's no longer in production. They're not going to continue to put that product on the shelf and continue to build it,
Manufacturer.
even though there are a few of us out there that are trying to
needing them.
replace them, right?
Mhm.
Still need them, yeah. Now, oftentimes in the world of car parts, you can find an equal, something that is close, similar, or right on target.
Right.
In this particular case, that just wasn't the case. So we talked to a number of manufacturers. We talked to Munro, we talked to Olin's, we talked to Penske, we talked to Intrax. And again, it was a small run that needed to be done, and it was very difficult to avoid a high MOQ, minimum order quantity. But I'm pleased to say that after lots of work and rebuilding shocks, which we still do, and placing an engineer on that project who's been rebuilding shocks for 35 years,
Mhm.
we were able to dial in a specification and attach that to a vendor that is now supplying those shocks to us, specifically made for the Tesla Roadster. The proper weight distribution and all of that, with some options for damping and adjustable.
We're excited.
We're excited, yes.
Mhm.
Virtually every Roadster that comes in our shop needs some suspension work.
My back is excited.
Yeah, there you go. He test drives as well. So we will have product in-house within the next 5 weeks. And we've got a bunch of sets on order. So we'll have those out on our e-store shortly, and the shock problem is finally solved. And of course, Victor's very pleased with that as well,
Absolutely.
as I am. Yeah. So I wanted to point out one thing. The Tesla Roadster matchmaking site, that's where we sell Roadsters, is doing extremely well. It keeps on growing. Our reputation grows. The number of pre-qualified buyers grows. We're up to 404 as of this morning. And the reason I know that is we just sent out another Roadster that came up for sale this morning. And what we do typically is we don't advertise on social media for 24 hours or so to give the pre-qualified Roadster buyers a chance to have a look at these cars. If you want to join that exclusive list, go to our website, go to Roadsters for Sale, and there's a blue button there that says Join Our Pre-Qualified Buyer List. And if you do, you will get early warning when something comes up for sale. Upper right-hand corner is where that button is. And to give you an example of how this works, that electric blue Roadster that's at the very top of the list there just got posted this morning. And I had a call within 10 minutes after sending to the pre-qualified buyer list, and it looks like this one may be taken off the market. The pre-qualified guys enjoy having a first look at these exclusive cars. And this particular one, by the way,
Beautiful.
yeah, it's one of my favorite colors, electric blue. And the combination, it's got the gray seats. It's a sport Roadster, so it's got the little red S in the middle of the seat. the wheels, that silver with electric blue and those seats is my favorite combination in an electric blue. Our 1457, is it the same color combination next door? I think so. You know that? Not sure. All
Not
right.
sure.
We've got 1457, which is the second to last Roadster built, and I believe that's also a sport. And that's one of our collector cars that we ended up buying years ago. But anyway, this car now is for sale. And what typically happens is there's an enormous amount of support that's provided by our company. And every time I look at the amount of involvement that we have, I keep thinking to myself, how do we do this for free? We continue to do it for free. I think yesterday, Victor spent 2 hours with a customer that wanted to see some of the Roadsters that we have for sale in our service center. And it's not just the shop time or the shop people's time with these cars. It's also the processing time. Our webmaster gets involved. Our social media team gets involved. Our accounting team gets involved with the escrow assistants, title assistants, and then our transportation team, which also offers free services for helping get transport for these Roadsters that are sold, even if they're not in our shop. So I guess my final point here is we provide a lot for free, and our customers are very appreciative. This one that came in yesterday, again, he says, I want to thank the entire team for making the sale of my Roadster possible and for all your help along the way. The car has been picked up, delivered. Buyer seems very happy. And of course, I'm not, because he didn't want to lose his Roadster. Between your website and escrow services that you provided, the process was much smoother with fewer hassles than if I had tried to do it on my own. He'll definitely refer us. So the Roadster matchmaking site definitely is very popular. We sell more Roadsters today than any auction house on the planet. And again, it's a free service. If you have a Roadster that you'd like to sell, all you have to do is click one of those blue buttons. There's a query form that asks questions about the configuration of your Roadster. And for those of you looking to buy a Roadster, it's a great place because the first thing that is different about us in auction, there's no expiration date. Those listings are live until the car is sold, until the seller is happy with the price or with the person they're selling it to. And you can negotiate. Those prices out on our website are the asking prices. And what we ask is that you guys are gentle. Don't lowball these people. These cars are collectible. So anyway, wanted to point out the advantages of going with our matchmaking site. And I think we're selling on average now 2 Roadsters per month through that site. It looks like YouTube, Rolling Stone says, heck yeah, nice. My back will be happy too. And then we've got YouTube, Joey's Cleaning Lady joining us. He says, lots of Roadster owners put in Elise shocks. The spring rate is a bit different, but not too bad. Better than driving around with blown out Bilsteins. That's a point, yeah. With all the test driving that I do, I can immediately tell a low mileage Roadster from one that's had some mileage on it because it gets bone jarring. And since I've lived in the same house now for like 40 years or so, it's a 7-mile trip both ways, by the way. I know every pothole, every crack in the road, and I can tell the difference immediately between Roadsters and what, if any, suspension problems exist. So I'm a great test driver in that regard as well. Looks like we've got George joining us, and his name on YouTube is Watch Rich Rebuild's channel. Rich always gets free advertising on our podcasts. He says, I would love it if you look into or think about doing matchmaking to buy and sell early positions on the Cybertruck list. Now, that's something I don't think I've considered. People, I guess, would be selling their reservations. Can you sell them? Does Tesla allow you to do that?
I'm not sure if they allow it. I know that Corey and Sandy were both going on their podcast and on their YouTube channel saying if anybody wants to sell us their Cybertruck, we'll buy it at up to like double the cost or something crazy like that. They really want to tear one down as soon as they come out.
You
But
mean,
I'm not sure what the policy is on it.
yeah, was that double $100 or?
Yeah, double the reservation amount.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit different if they said double for the new Tesla Roadster, the $50,000 down payment, double that, and yeah, it'd be worth someone's while, I think. But great idea, George. It's worth looking into, yeah. And by the way, if any of you are watching the podcast and you have a Cybertruck reservation you're interested in selling, email us. And if we get enough interest, we will post it on the website. Our website these days gets an enormous amount of traffic. So if you're looking to sell anything Tesla related, that's definitely a good place to park it. YouTube, Rolling Stonks, thanks for the suggestion. I auto-X my Roadster, so I need the correct specs and adjustability. The reason my head's bouncing back and forth, we didn't realize this. We did a podcast Sunday, and there's a camera smack in the middle of that. But if you can put up my head bouncing, we won't have to move the camera. We're good. The car has been on jack stands for almost 4 months now, waiting for shocks. Yeah, so we've got product. It's coming, and it should solve that problem. YouTube, Heinrich. He says, did you notice how I pronounce that, by the way? Heinrich. In the U.S., English people say Heinrich, right? Well, Germans know how to pronounce CH. That combination turns it into a. Now, you've got one of those names, too, Vianis.
Vianis.
There are 2 L's in there that are silent. So YouTube, Heinrich says, if you were an interested buyer that wants to buy a Roadster and also use it, does it matter in which year the Roadster was built? So in other words, are there differences between 2008 to 2012 in Europe? There are some minor differences, and they're mostly cosmetic. Inside the cabin of a 1.5 Roadster, which is up to VIN 500, they have a stick shift. And it's now drive, neutral, and reverse. The reason for that was they used to have a 2-speed transmission in the early Roadsters while they were still doing prototypes, and found that to be unsuccessful because they were burning up those Borg-Warner clutch plates. There was too much torque in that electric motor. So they decided to keep the console rather than work the whole thing and change that to drive, reverse, and neutral. The change came with VIN 501, which is where they went to a push-button transmission. It's the same place on the console, but they switched the VDS vehicle display screen from the lower left to the middle where that console is on the 2.0 Roadsters. But aside from that, there's some front lip changes. The opening on a 1.5 looks like a largemouth bass, whereas on the 2.0s, you've got kind of a grill arrangement. And in the 2.5s later on, they even put little vents or grills on the side of that front clip.
More sport.
Yeah. But other than that, the styling is fundamentally the same. Functionality is the same. They did change the power electronics module between the 1.5 and 2.0 versions. Some people like the 1.5 better, actually, even though it's a bit bigger. So from a driving standpoint, very little difference. It does get a bit different if you have a sport versus a non-sport version Roadster. The non-sport 0 to 60 is 3.9 seconds. The sport version is 3.7 seconds. And, I can attest to this, that 0.3 of a second is so subtle, I don't think I would recognize it or notice the difference if I wasn't told that it was a sport or a non-sport. How about you? You drive them?
No, you can't tell the difference.
Yeah. All right. Oh, Heinrich says, thank you for pronouncing my name correctly. Does not happen often. Yeah, I can imagine. No. We have to be European or German or Swiss or Austrian in order to pronounce that correctly. All right. Another Roadster item. As these cars are aging, we're beginning to see aging issues. Certain components and parts and modules are beginning to manifest a higher rate of failures. And the most recent rash that we're seeing is switchpacks. Would you agree
Yes.
with that?
Yes, I
Okay.
agree. We've had an increase of switchback issues.
The Switchpack is a little, I wish I brought one here. It's about that size of that module there, by the way, but it's encased in a black plastic housing. It sits in probably the worst spot on a Roadster, which is underneath the dash, underneath the windshield by the driver's side. So all of the heat that comes through the windshield eventually gets into that space where that module sits. Now, fortunately, there are no extremely heat sensitive components in there, like electrolytic capacitors, for example, that will dry out if they're in a hot environment, even more so than just aging. There are, though, a bunch of MOSFETs in there, and these are metal oxide. Now, see, when asked to come up or describe that acronym, I'm oftentimes stumped. Metal oxide S semiconductor field effect transistor. I think I got it. All right. So these are power switching transistors, and this little module's function in life is to divert all of the current that normally runs through a switch for your headlights, for example, through a semiconductor, so you can use a very tiny switch or even a push button. And in older cars, you didn't have that. You actually had rheostats and heavy load switching type switches for things like your dimmer lights. Remember those underneath by the floorboard? That was a pretty heavy duty switch, good for like 20 amps or more. What the Switchpack does is it takes all that current away from your tiny switching devices inside the cabin, and it does all that heavy lifting. And those MOSFETs, with very little input, are able to switch heavy loads. Well, with age, these appear to be dying, and there's a chip in there. So what we've done is we repair things like this right down a component level, and for the most part, we're able to resolve problems in these types of modules. Now, the reason component level repair is absolutely essential for something like a Roadster, none of the electronics have been made in that car since 2008. And the only way to keep these cars alive was either to depend on Tesla's limited inventory for Tesla Roadster parts, which is now dwindling, or to have a company like us repair down a component level and fix what's wrong with it. We're able to reverse engineer most things in a Roadster and have successfully created schematics, test points, wiring diagrams for virtually everything in a car. But this is one module that we have not yet successfully reverse engineered 100%. In fact, there's a chip on there that we can't identify yet.
Right.
So what I did a couple days ago, I reached out to Tesla and I said, look, guys, you're probably facing the same problem we are, dwindling supply of switchbacks. We repair these. We'll even repair your cores, in other words, the defective ones that they've swapped out. What we need you to help us with is, if you can dig up the schematics for these, now we can do two things. Not only can we repair them more quickly, but we can develop a tester and a load bank so that we can actually work on these on the bench. To work on a Switchpack module inside a Tesla Roadster requires contortion skills, because you've got there's a windshield here, you've got the dash here, you have to take that out, and now you're working in about 7 inches of space, trying to probe, trying to take readings. And so what we're embarking on now is developing a tester and load bank on a bench somewhere so we can bring these switch packs in and work on them right on the bench and do component level troubleshooting. So wish us luck. Tesla oftentimes comes through for us and helps us with things like this, especially if it's in their best interest as well. And it is for two reasons. One is we're keeping their cars running. We're keeping the Roadsters alive. And secondly, anything that we do like this, we share with them, schematics, test points, and we even offer to build them testers, because Tesla does have a Roadster engineering test team that builds test equipment for these service centers.
We'll take in their cores, repair them, and we'll potentially have additional parts for their customer base as well.
So again, we're on the early stages of this request, but we're certainly hoping that they can come through and get us some schematics again, and we'll be able to keep Roadsters alive for even longer. YouTube, T. Barra says, have you tried a dash cover to insulate from the heat? We have not. The Roadster typically, I mean, people don't typically realize that there's some electronics underneath that dash that could be affected. And we're not even sure that it's the heat that's causing this problem. It could just be age, it could just be use, because these things are working constantly. They control the wiper motors, they control the headlights, they control the door locks, they control all the 12-volt devices, the VMS modules.
All the 12 volts inside the cabin.
The VDS screen, yes. All of the lights, of course, tail lights, all of that. A lot runs through that little Switchpack. All right, so looks like we don't have any questions right now. Let's see what else we've got here Roadster related. Oh, good news. If we can bring up a picture, Jesse, it's the hood vanes Roadster, the very orange. Part of keeping Roadsters alive and functioning is, and it's not just us, there are a lot of people in the community that are contributing to recreating parts, recreating the procedures. Tom Saxton, for example, with the log file analysis program. Henry Sharp with the CAN Junior and CAN Senior adapters. Yeah. What we're looking at here is a very orange Roadster, which looks very good with carbon fiber accents. And if you notice on the hood there are two hood vanes and a larger carbon fiber piece that goes from the hood vanes to the windshield. These hood vanes are extremely difficult to remove. We've done it successfully and unsuccessfully. We actually cracked one time. It was on a very orange Roadster just like this. Our vendor, carbon fiber vendor, we have a few of them, has actually developed a overlay for this portion of the Roadster, which means that if you have a painted hood vane combination like this, you're now going to be able to buy an overlay that goes on top of these, that gets glued to these surfaces, and you can't tell that it's an overlay because it actually wraps a bit around those. And that is in our opinion, the easiest way to convert a standard Roadster to a carbon fiber Roadster on the exterior in this portion of the car. I guarantee you, I don't know many people out there that are going to be able to remove the hood vanes themselves. We struggle with it.
We had a parts car that had a broken hood, and I always like to give it a shot, and nope, we were not able to successfully remove it without damaging the hood vane.
There were a few chemicals that Tesla used on the Roadster that seemed to be impervious and bulletproof. One of them is that orange epoxy that they use to hold the frame together. We've seen collision damage cars where the aluminum ripped and the epoxy was intact. It's that strong. They must have used something similar to this on these hood vanes. There's even a brass pin that goes down the middle of this industrial strength epoxy. So we will have these hood vane overlays on our e-store shortly. And for those of you interested, the hood vane pieces themselves, and there are two of those, are around the $400 range. And then the larger piece, which goes from there to the windshield, is going to be in the neighborhood of $750 to $800. And again, that will allow you to convert your Roadster to a hood vane carbon fiber exterior or visible carbon fiber car. And of course, we have the spoiler in the back if you want to go all the way, and the front nose lip. That's right by where you see the picture of me. And those are becoming more popular, it seems like. We've got more customers selecting those.
Yeah, and we also have the rear carbon fiber diffuser. We are currently installing one on a very orange in the shop. So
are we? Okay. All right. Yeah, carbon fiber looks good on a Roadster, especially the very orange. I have another picture, if we can throw it up there, Jesse. It is the someone asked picture. And what this is about is a couple of weeks ago or so, I posted a picture of this Tesla Roadster on a dock with some yachts in the background, and that's exactly what the prompt said. It said, render a Tesla Roadster in Monaco, I think it was, with some yachts in the background, and that's what it rendered. Well, I had someone email me a couple days ago, and he asked, "What is the VIN on that Roadster? And could you give us some more pictures of the interior?" And I reiterated what I did on that Facebook post. I said, "This is not a real car. This is an AI rendering of a Tesla Roadster." And if you actually look closely there, you'll see that there are probably some design elements that are incorrect. Let me
Like
see if I can
five
get a.
hood veins on there. It looks pretty aggressive, though. I like it.
Is it 5 hood
Mhm.
vanes? Yeah. On this one, they did not put a charge port on the passenger side. And what you'll oftentimes see too is it will put little details in there that really weren't on the original car. But this one was convincing enough to where one of our customers asked about, well, some more information about this car, potentially to buy it, perhaps, you know. But what I wanted to point out here is that artificial intelligence definitely is learning and is doing a better job with Tesla Roadsters. And it's becoming so convincing that we actually have people now asking about VINs and more shots of the interior. All right. Any other questions? Yeah. He says, TikTok, JMac, in a 2020 Model S, is that even possible? Claims that the 2020 is now free unlimited charging.
I'm not sure
Hmm.
that's on TikTok. If you can let us know maybe a little more what you're talking about. I'm not sure what that's related to.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe that free unlimited supercharging ended in 2015, 16 or so. Do you know?
15.
15? Yeah. Quite a deal if you have it. So another question that we often get asked is, with Tesla Roadsters again, the 2016 Tesla Roadster battery packs are experiencing a problem in that they're losing power. It's an impedance problem.
Right.
We have a car in shop right now from San Diego that after we fix the PEM, we believe that it's going to have that symptom because it's a 2016 pack, and the customer had begun to notice some anemic performance. Did we make any progress on that PEM, by the way?
No, not yet. We're dealing with the thermal management system first to ensure that the PEM isn't being overworked,
Mhm.
and that it's being properly cooled. Once we have successfully installed those, we'll go ahead and test drive to see if that gets rid of our PEM problems, and then go from there.
And that's a PEM that's seeing baseboard A and C overtemp issues?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Which, by the way, could be thermal management related in that you've got clogged transistor heat sinks, for example. Maybe the car hasn't gotten its regular preventive maintenance.
Actually, there's so many cars at the shop. I actually remember that we did take a look at it this morning. The fans were not turning on due to a burnt PEM fan connector
Okay.
within the PEM.
Another common issue. Yeah.
We were able to remove the lid, take a look down into the connector from the inside, confirm that it's burnt.
Okay.
So that will need to be replaced.
So we'll fix that CIC board in that PEM, and then we can test drive, and then we can see how that battery is behaving, if it's anything like the other 2016s we've seen.
If it's showing any signs of
Right.
anemic.
By the way, that PEM fan connector that Victor is talking about it's on the CIC board, which is a power switching board inside the power electronic module. And that connector, it's a Molex connector, is actually marginally sized for the application. It's an 18 amp connector, and at times the current goes up into the 17 amp range. Way too close for comfort.
Overheats.
Right. And the other problem with that connector is, which probably contributes to this problem, is every annual preventive maintenance that's done requires plugging and unplugging the other Molex connector, the other gender connector, male and female. And what happens on the female portion of that connector, which is on the CIC board, you get what's called pin regression, which means it's a crappy design, basically, but there's a 90-degree pin there. It kind of looks like this.
It gets pushed in.
Yeah, they keep pushing on it every time they plug in the connector, and eventually you have less and less metal-to-metal contact, which in the world of conductivity results in heat, And then you eventually heat it up to the point where it melts the connector and it fries the board or fries the pins behind the board. So that's what we're going to be repairing on this particular car. What we do is a couple of things. We not only replace the connector,
So we
but we
upgrade it.
also upgrade it
Mm-hmm.
and we retrofit it so that pin regression is no longer possible.
Exactly.
And it's one of the 50 items we do during a PEM rebuild and upgrade and overhaul. Important things to do because this particular PEM that you're talking about was replaced by Tesla 2 years ago.
Mm.
So it didn't last very long.
Not without the upgrade.
Exactly. So the reason that I brought this subject up about the 2016 battery packs, we have it on good or from a reliable source that the new 3.0 packs, the 2020 versions, unlike the 2016s, are using the new Panasonic cells, which are much better than the LG cells that were used in the first generation battery packs. So we expect the 2020 replacement 3.0 battery packs in the Roadsters to last hopefully as long as the original legacy packs. They're going on 15 years now.
Not longer.
Yeah, exactly, if not longer. That's a good point. Everybody asks, how long will these multi-cell lithium-ion battery packs last? And no one knows because we haven't reached end of life yet, other than this aberration with the 2016s, which were defective cells.
Right.
All right, YouTube, Lightning Rod. Hey, how you doing? He joins us regularly. He says, hello, everyone. And then we've got YouTube, T. Herrera. He says 3/31/2017. I'm not sure what
I think
that.
that's the supercharger end date.
Oh, supercharger end date. All right, thank you. So if you've got 2017s, it looks like some of you still have the free supercharging. All right, let's see what else we have.
We're at an hour, just so you know, Pete.
So we're at an hour, okay. All right, let me see if I've got anything else here that I didn't push through on the agenda items.
You had another picture of a dog?
Yeah, let's bring that up. It's a good story.
Yeah.
We've got a customer recently, doctor in New York, got a Fusion Red Roadster, beautiful Roadster, and we helped her with a windshield question, and she sent me pictures of her Roadster. This is not the Roadster, by the way. This is another one in New York. But she was showing 2 Irish Wolfhounds by her Tesla Roadster. They weren't inside the car, but she was, of course, proud of both the car and her beautiful dogs. My sister-in-law has those, too. They don't live very long, though. Irish Wolfhounds. And the other part of the story, I'm digressing here, I realize, their claim to fame in hunting was they would run up alongside a deer and then knock it over with their rear haunch so that the hunter could, bag the deer. And the reason my sister-in-law told me this, because when I go to her house, these dogs were constantly pushing their rumps into my body. And she says they're just instinctively doing that. That's what they were bred to do. But anyway, so the doc in New York has Irish Wolfhounds, and I decided I would send her a picture of another Tesla Roadster customer in New York as well, whose Roadster we ended up buying, by the way. And he warned me, said, Pete, the car has a loose passenger seat. The reason is I didn't bolt it in. It has not had that seat in place for a few years because we like to take my Great Dane driving in the Roadster, and it loves it. So here's a picture of a Great Dane sitting not on a seat in a Roadster, but sitting on the floor, and you can see how far its head sticks above that windshield.
Loving it.
Yeah, just really enjoying the Roadster. All right. The other thing that I wanted to mention is Victor spent 2 hours with a customer yesterday showing them the Roadsters that we have for sale in our service center. And what we're finding these days is you can sell a Roadster from your home, and if you've taken care of deferred maintenance, you're probably in pretty good shape because once the seller gets the car, there's nothing to do. We had one that sold just recently that now has a fan problem, and it's got to go back to a service center after the sale to have the fan replaced. We have customers that actually send us their Roadsters to not only have all the deferred maintenance taken care of, but then also listed for sale. And sometimes that happens without them realizing they want to sell it until we've done work on it, which is another Roadster that's coming up for sale here shortly. But our suggestion is if you're thinking about selling your Roadster, there are so few service centers, Tesla service centers these days, that will accept a Roadster. So you may have to transport it somewhere anyway. Transport it to our service center. We'll take care of the deferred maintenance. We'll take high-quality professional images of your Roadster. We'll list it and post it for sale, and then also spend time with prospective buyers. We have a number of people that show up each month looking at the Roadsters in our shop since we have so many for sale now.
Yeah, we like to make it easy on our clients, so we like it be known as the one-stop shop where you can get everything and all done. And when potential clients come in, we provide buyer education.
Lots of it,
A
yeah.
lot of them haven't been inside a Roadster. They don't know how to drive one. They don't know how to charge it. So that comes along with the package.
And then the other question typically is, what do you do when you service it? And that's the other part of our tour then. They can see what we do inside the Roadsters and why it's so important to take care of deferred maintenance. We take them in the electronics lab and we show them a PEM like this that hasn't been rebuilt, that's got a burnt up connector. Well, hopefully that customer was lucky. Sometimes these CIC boards burn so bad, they're multi-layer boards, that they're not repairable. Well, now you're in a world of hurt because you have to find a donor car to get a board out of.
Yeah, when it comes to PEM, preventative maintenance is key.
Oh, you got something, Jesse?
Yeah, and Pete, I want to see if I can get you to go on a rant here so we can use it for a clip. What do you have to say, speaking of that, to people that, like on Facebook, for example, that say, if it's not broke, don't fix it?
Oh, my God. Okay, there's a good one. How about the guy on that auction site that said, you know what? You should leave the PEM alone. It doesn't need to be serviced. I've got a 100-year-old radio that's still functioning. I'm just shaking my head. Did he just say that? Yeah. I have some radios from the 40s and 60s as well from the last century, but there are definitely deferred maintenance items. All right, so they want me to go on a rant here so we can do a short. I'll start off with just describing the importance of taking care of deferred maintenance, and I'll tell you a story. I had a Ferrari 308 GTSI for 23 years. I love that car, but it was killing me, the maintenance. A tune-up was $4,000, you know? These are exotic cars. They're not like your average Ford and Chevy where, you know, you can get an oil change for $49 or whatever. But anyway, every 30,000 miles, you have to have a engine rebuild. This is where they go in, they change the rings, they regrind the valves, they change the bearings, and you've got a choice. You can do just your lower bearings or your upper bearings as well for the upper camshaft. Well, I decided I was already into this car like $25,000. I don't want to spend anymore. I said, how important is it? And they said, well, it's all about priorities. So I skipped that. I skipped the upper cam bearings thinking, you know, it's got 30,000 miles. You know, I'm sure they're not going to go bad. I'm telling you, a year later, I'm driving in Scottsdale with my wife, and we start hearing a light knocking noise going down Scottsdale Road. By the time I got home, it was louder. My upper cam bearings had gone out. I remember a doctor here in town in Phoenix that got 70,000 miles on his Ferrari 308 as well. He was using it as a daily driver, and he skipped that 30,000 mile replacement or that engine rebuild. He ended up losing the upper cam bearing, and his valves dropped down into the piston housings, and the engine was basically destroyed. All right, so getting back to Roadsters for a moment. These cars are going on 15 years old. There's deferred maintenance, and it's not like your ICE engine. Sure, there's some deferred ICE engine maintenance that needs to be done in a Roadster, like your suspension, for example, your bushings, your fans, the things that we've been talking about, thermal management issues, pumps. We didn't even talk about that. On a 1.5 Roadster, you have a 12-volt DC brush motor pump, and its function in life is to keep that 1,000-pound battery pack cool. Change that thing. It's dirt cheap compared to what it would cost you if that thing begins to not cool properly.
Exactly.
If you lose an APS unit inside that battery pack, that's a DC to DC converter, which hasn't been made since 2008, and there are no more in existence right now that we're aware of. We continue to try to repair those. Yeah. You could be in a world of hurt again because you've got to find a donor car, a collision damage car. And these days, collision damage Roadsters are considered collectible. And you'd be lucky if you find a couple of them at the auctions each year. When we do, we try to buy them, and they're 3 times more expensive than they used to be.
Yes, it's definitely not if it's going to happen, but when.
Yeah. So getting back to the power electronics module for a moment, inside a Tesla Roadster, you have deferred maintenance, and the majority of it is inside that power electronics module. This is a 3-phase inverter that switches hundreds of amps continuously, and you have components in there that are wearing with age. And if you let them fail, which you could do if you can go down to AutoZone and buy another PEM, wait till it fails. I fully agree. It may be cheaper to do that than to do a rebuild. But since you can't and those parts aren't available, your only option is take care of that deferred maintenance, be proactive, because when it fails, you might be in a world of hurt with a lot of expense.
And when a component fails, it usually likes to take friends with them. So
Oh, totally, yeah. You take this little board right here. This, and it's still here from the last Tesla Roadster podcast. We were talking about these transformers, how hard they are to get, and how we finally found them. We've got them coming in now. But there's a power board that sits below this. And if you don't take care of deferred maintenance in a Tesla Roadster PEM, the transistors have 400 volts DC on them at hundreds of amps. The distance between that transistor case with 400 volts and the heat sink, which is aluminum, conductive aluminum below it, is a micro-inch of insulating material. That insulating material from 2008 or 2011 is deteriorating, crumbling, and decomposing. And when it finally gets thin enough to where that transistor touches the aluminum heatsink, you're going to have 400 volts with hundreds of amps shorting to ground, and you get lightning and fireworks. When that happens, it doesn't often go gracefully into the night. It takes out everything upstream and downstream along with it. And this is one of the boards that sits on top of the power board that gets compromised when you lose a transistor or banks of transistor on the power board below it. Well, now you have to fix not only the power board below it, but you have to change chips and bias resistors on this board as well, and possibly a transformer, which up until now has not been available because we just found it. So anyway, that's my rant regarding deferred maintenance. And
we have two comments that one supports and one challenges.
All right, good. Michael Aldia, all right, he says, that's like saying, why change the engine oil if the engine isn't broken? Now,
Right.
let me tell you who Michael is. He's coming in on YouTube. Michael was one of the first Tesla Roadster technicians. He knows these cars infinitely or extremely well. He was the ESS pack expert, the battery expert. And anyway, so his endorsement carries a lot of weight, or should carry a lot of weight with you, and he's absolutely right. Don't change the engine oil if it's not broken or if there's still oil in the car. How about a better one, what my wife did? When the oil light comes on, continue to drive the car, right? All right. Then we've got an Instagram, Frieden95. He says, learn math. 40's not 100 years ago.
So he's complaining that you said it was only 80 years ago. Excuse us. Only 80-year-old components are still the same. They're not going to work.
Yeah. We appreciate all of the opinions coming in, and any of you interested, check out our website. If you want to see what is required to do to a Roadster PEM, either under services or pricing, if you have access, you can see the 50 items that we change, replace, or resolve in a Tesla Roadster power electronics module. And by the way, where did this come from? How did we learn this? Well, it was a bunch of trial and error since 2014 working in the electronics in a Roadster. But more importantly, we've got 40 years of experience in Gruber Power Services repairing critical power equipment in data centers. Lighting inverters, uninterruptible power systems, which, by the way, is the same technology what's in a Tesla Roadster. It's a 3-phase inverter. And the rules of thumb there are, you don't let your filter capacitors age beyond 8 years. You proactively change those so they don't short, blow up your inverter, or even catch your building on fire, which is something that happened in Texas years ago on a Liebert UPS. Have you had a good show?
Yeah, it was good.
All right.
We're hour and 10 minutes.
Well, we appreciate everyone joining us. It doesn't look like there are any more questions. We are going to have another podcast tomorrow, which is the General EV podcast. But one that's pretty exciting is,
Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, go ahead. We do have a couple more questions, but
okay. Well, we'll entertain those, but let me tell them about Rafael DeMaestro. He is the gentleman that went around the world in a Tesla Roadster in 2012 to prove that emission-free transportation is viable, possible, and pretty exciting, actually. His Roadster came in our shop about 5 months ago or so for a battery replacement to the new 3.0 pack, and now we're weatherproofing and rebuilding the rest of the car. I think yesterday they rebuilt or weatherproofed both the charge port.
The charge port and the HVAC controller.
Right. And this is important because this car is going to be out in the elements. He's not going to be parking this in a garage every
All
night.
elements.
All elements, exactly, including Four Seasons. He's going to be joining us. He's flying in the 26th of this month. He's going to be on our podcast, and he's going to tell you all about his adventures with a Tesla Roadster. So that is one that's definitely worth keeping an eye on. It'll be around the 26th or so. And it looks like we've got a couple more questions here. YouTube, Core Glass, welcome back. He says, are the windscreens from the Roadster, from the windshields, from the Lotus, MK1 Lotus Elise windscreen? It's actually the Lotus Elise, but there were modifications done to the Roadster windshield, and we've been unable to find any more in existence. So the Lotus Elise windshield is what we're currently needing to use, and the only drawback is in the portion down below where the VIN tag is. On the Roadster, there was a cutout so that you could see that VIN tag. And what I mean by cutout, there's some dark bands around the windshields. You've got your solar thing up on top, which is for tinting, and then down below to hide the nuts and bolts, they have a black band that runs through there. The only difficulty with the Lotus Elise windshield on a Roadster is you can't quite see that VIN tag as well as you could if it was a traditional Roadster windshield.
Right.
And of course, if you get pulled over and the cop tries to give you a ticket and verify the VIN, he's going to have a hard time reading it. And most likely he'll then say, well, I guess I won't give you a ticket because I can't read the VIN tag.
That would be nice.
Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? So YouTube, Lightning Rod, he says, what do you think of the new Toyota president, formerly from Lexus, announcing 800-mile, 10-minute charging, solid-state battery announcement? I think it's wonderful. We talked about that.
So Richard said yesterday.
Yeah. It's, Toyota's having a very difficult time warming up to this whole notion of EVs. And don't know why, because they changed the industry with the Prius. They're the ones that introduced us to hybrid vehicles.
Right.
In fact, that's what inspired me in the 90s when we bought our first Prius, was being able to drive with an electric motor for about a mile. And that was exciting as heck to me, being an electronics guy, you know. We had one other question. I don't know if I got to that.
No, those were the two.
Those were it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So anyway, we've had a good podcast. Make sure you join us for the other podcasts. And we will see you next week then.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
For the Roadster podcast. We'll see him tomorrow for the regular
podcast. And Victor, thank you for joining us.
Yep. Thank you.
Yep.